You know, Ohio is one of those places. It's one of the ones on the bucket list that everybody goes to one time in their life. You know, you got those top states that everybody wants to hit. And I had never hit Ohio, and I wanted to. And I was in a comfortable situation this year where opening week I shot my big buck a couple days into the season in September. And it left me a whole fall to do some new things. And one of the things I wanted to accomplish was to tackle Ohio. I wanted to hunt the hills of Ohio, and I wanted to experience what those hills are like and how they're different from here, and grow as a hunter from what I see there. Now, I've been talking to Chad from Exodus for a long time, and Chad has been hunting southern Ohio for a few years. He's from Ohio, but he's from northern Ohio, and he's got a lot of similarities in me. It's really easy to go to a place like that and just perch yourself on a long, continuous ridge and shoot your 130, 140 inch buck that everybody shoots when they go there. But you know what? I can do that anywhere. And he's the same as me, as in he likes to set his goals higher and he likes to hunt down big mature bucks. Now, don't take that wrong. I mean, I'd shoot that 130 inch buck if it walked by, but it's not what I'm hunting. And if you hunt 130 inch bucks sitting on those leeward ridges, that's what you're going to shoot. If you hunt mature bucks, you still have opportunities to shoot, you know, those 130 inch bucks, but you're in the game. You're at least in the game for a big buck. And I had a short window to go to Ohio before I went to the Public Land Challenge. And I talked to Chad, and Chad had been running cameras in southern Ohio for a long time, and I found it really interesting, his approach. I mean, I believe he said he had over 100 cameras in that section of Ohio, and he ran them for like a couple years, a couple seasons, maybe longer than that. He showed me one cell cam he still had running down there that's been running for several years. He's got a solar panel on the back of the camera, so it recharges itself, and it's been sending him pictures for years in the same spot, in the same ridge. I found that really interesting. So what he was doing was targeting mature bucks by finding mature bucks with trail cameras, and then targeting where they're triggering cameras and doing camera drops in the areas where these big bucks were, and then learning which ridges they're on at what times of the year and really patterning them. And I thought it was a really cool way he was hunting. But when you're hunting mature bucks and you're hunting a very low deer density area, even with that camera knowledge, it could be hard to kill them. And he had not taken a trophy buck down there yet, but he had not taken a buck down there yet because he held out for big ones, and I kind of like that about him. So I kind of expected Ohio to be, we'd get on the side hills or the ridges up top, go in from the top, get to the sides, and find the little spots along those ridges, the points where the bucks were bedding. And I guess I didn't look at the maps close enough, because when I got there, it was surprising to me that the ridges were, even though they're the same shape as the ones we have here in, you know, western Wisconsin and Iowa, even though they're the same shape, they were a lot more condensed. So the drop-off was just as steep, but the elevation was shorter. So it wasn't as far down to the bottoms. And the way the road systems were set up in the National Forest and the publics that we looked at, they almost set you up to come in from the top. And Chad told me some interesting things about his trail camera surveys that he'd never get the mature bucks on the ridges, on the cameras, in daylight, which I found very interesting. It looked to me like all that pressure was coming from on top. The deer know the hunters come in from on top, and they're bedding on that side hill on the benches created by logging trucks, and they're not coming up on top in daylight. And looking at the woods, when we came on a year that didn't have very many acorns, it was hard to find an acorn. It looked to me like the bucks were dropping down to crop fields, dropping down to brushy areas and edges, dropping down to river bottoms, and places where there was food for them to eat. And now, the obvious one is the crops. And I knew that at the timing we were down there, which was the last week of October, they're going to be hitting corn heavy and just starting to rut, so the bucks are going to be where the does are. So a lot of people concentrate on that corn, but what they don't concentrate on is on the river bottoms and stuff that are brushy. For whatever reason, a lot of people just think ag when they think of what deer eat, and that's just a little tiny portion of what they eat. They eat a lot of browse. And the third week of October in Ohio is still pretty green. There's still a lot of browse. Not that there's not browse all year, but there's a lot of different browses that are concentrated in those river bottoms and on those opening edges and on the edges of clear cuts and in clear cuts. So I went into this thinking they were going to be up high. They're going to be running these ridges, maybe looking for acorns, maybe the downwind side of clear cuts, and feeding on clear cuts or acorns, which the acorns weren't there. And what I found was, they were dropping down to the stuff. So then I changed my game plan, and you got to do this fast when you're there for less than a week. I changed my game plan to finding food sources down low that they would go to, getting between the bucks on the hillside and where they're dropping to.
We're in here scouting a bottom that I've scouted, ran cameras, hunted in the past, that typically or historically has held a couple good deer, but most of the sign that we're finding down in this bottom is a smaller sign. We were hoping we could get on some bigger sign down the bottom before we went up in elevation and really dove into it, but we're just not finding much. So I think the plan is I think that there's a cut within a mile or two here, a new clear cut. So we're gonna go try to find that, scout it, and then just keep putting boots on the ground until we find something big that we like. Most of my cameras are down because I had no intentions of coming back here and hunting, so the one camera that we did check yesterday just had some smaller bucks. The biggest deer on there was maybe 130, an older deer that's downhill, but so we'll just keep putting boots on the ground and see if we can't find something we like.
As we scouted, I really watched Chad because I know he's a successful hunter on big bucks, and I wanted to see how he did things different, not how he did things the same. I feel like you can learn from every hunter that's out there that you get around, especially if they're a good hunter. And Chad's a good hunter. And one thing I saw Chad do was everywhere we went when we were scouting, even if we didn't intend to hunt there, when he saw a good sign, when he saw things of interest, things that brought up a conversation about what's going on here, he would drop a trail camera, sometimes two, and we'd get intel on what's going there. Even if we were there for 4 or 5 days, he told me, I'll stay an extra afternoon and I'll go pick up those cameras and I'll have that information for the future. I like that. Those cameras tell you a lot about what's going on when you're not there. The density in that area of Ohio was a lot lower than I expected. Deer were in pockets. And My goal was to scout, get onto a big buck, and hunt a big buck. Now, I'd probably take a 130, 140 inch buck, but my goal was to hunt a trophy buck, an old buck. And the only way I was going to do that in that low density was to put some miles on, burn some shoe leather, and think outside the box and try to find some hidden spot where people just weren't looking. We scouted like madmen. We probably put, 6 or 7 miles a day on our boot leather, and we probably put many, many, many miles on Chad's truck driving around looking at different angles of properties and trying to figure out what's getting missed, what ain't getting seen, studying maps while we're there looking at the properties, and just searching for that spot where that mature buck could hide under everybody's noses, the overlooked spot. The first couple of days, I just absorbed what Chad was telling me about the area and took his advice. And after scouting a while and not finding anything that really excited me, Chad told me of a spot where there's a lot of rubs coming out of a draw, going up onto a ridge to the backside of a clear cut where they feed, that he had seen year after year. And I asked him, "You run cameras in there?" Well, I already knew the answer to that. If Chad was there, his cameras ran there. And he said, yes, he had ran cameras there, but all the pictures of good bucks were night pictures. You see a theme here, up high, cameras, night pictures. A good sign and a good feeding area. I said, sounds good to me. I think I'm going to track that back, get on those rubs and follow them back where they're coming from. We studied some maps and figured out where I thought and where Chad thought, and we were both on the same page, where those bucks would be coming from and how I could get closer. So I went in there and I followed that rub line down and got into where it dropped down into a tight valley right below where I believe those bucks were bedding.
I'm sliding down this ridge here. It's a really skinny ridge, and it's a spot Chad pointed out to me. This is my first day in here, so I'm kind of taking his advice and then going from there. There's been sign all the way from the road back here, but there's also been some hunter sign. But the further back I get, the more the hunter sign is petering out, and the more the buck sign is picking up. So I'm going to ease back a little further here and see what we find. We got a 2-year-old clear cut right here on this hillside, and the sign's starting to pick up now. And it looks like the deer are just coming right up this old logging road. This might look wide open, but this is quite a ways from the road. And there's not much hunter sign back this far. So we'll just keep following and see where the sign comes from. And if Chad was right, he said it comes from around the corner and up in. So we'll see what we see. There's a whole bunch of rubs in here. There's a line of them. I can see 7 or 8 rubs going in a line down here. And there's some coming out over here, coming from down there. And they drop down to a ravine. Looking at a topo map, there's a point that comes off the other side that has a couple of good looking bedding points with a bench underneath it. And Chad had talked about a bench wrapping around that they bed on over there that he had found. I would bet they're bedded over there, drop into that ravine, and then coming up here. I think the trick to getting them in daylight is to drop down here as far as I can get and get close to that ravine. But if I get across it, I bet you they'd see me. And kind of watching the wind as I go in case there's swirls or thermals. But I think I need to go down there. Yeah, there's a lot of rubs in here, that's for sure. I can see some more going over that hill, and I can see some going down here. It'll be tricky getting this spot where I can shoot all of them. I gotta be quiet now. I'm getting kind of close to that, being across from that bench. That rub right there, that's a pretty good one. It's pretty high up on a pretty heavy tree. It's got some marks real high on it too. That's interesting. I got to my tree just as it started to pour. Now it's finally starting to lighten up, but it was just pouring. The sky's pretty dark. Here's the ravine here, the bedding point is over there. We can bed it around the corner, hopefully not right on that point, because we're looking at it. But all the signs seems to come from this way. It's kind of hard to read in this ground, it's hard. But there's rubs all around me and trails coming from over there. So if it's going to stop raining, I'm going to try and get up this tree back here. And hopefully they get up and move when the rain stops. Well, I'm soaked. It rained pretty good. I hid behind that big tree, but I still got pretty wet. And but I got in here. I got set up. The rain seems to have stopped. There's just a drizzle now. And that's where I think those bucks are coming from. Drop down here, go right through, and the rubs start up right in here, coming out of there, and go up the hill. I mean, you see rubs in here all over the place. So, I mean, if I didn't spook them out of here, we got a chance. I really think this would be a really good morning spot. Kind of sucks I got my scent all over the place, but it'd be a pretty good morning spot.
I didn't see any deer. And coming out, I actually found somebody's face mask. And where they set up against a tree on the ground, in the spot on the ridge where Chad always got the night pictures. So somebody had put pressure up there, and it probably affected the deer down where I was at. A lot of people don't get that. They think they can stage hunt in. They think they can, the bucks are bedded here, and they need to be here, but they're gonna start here, and if they don't get one, then they'll move here. Well, maybe the small bucks get up to here, and you have an opportunity at, maybe you're a 130-inch buck that most people can't get past. But if you want to shoot that monster, you need to be here day one. Because once you slap them on the rear and say game on, and they know they're being hunted, good luck. So somebody had slapped them on the rear.
All right, it's October 25th. Dan and I just split up. It's our first day here in Southern Ohio. I had no really intentions of coming back down in this area and hunting in 2021, but when Dan Infalt calls and says he wants to come hunt Ohio with you, you hunt Ohio. So we did a little bit of scouting this morning, which I'm sure we'll cover somewhere along one of these videos. Got in some good buck sign in an area where I ran cameras last year. Bumped a good buck, Cameron and I, and there was a rub line coming out of that bedding area, so Dan said that was good enough for him. So he's going in and to hunt that. I'm about a mile down the road, several ridge systems over, and I'm headed into the spot where I've been hunting this big deer the last couple of years. Down along the edge of this thermal hub, big primary scrape area, lots of oaks. So historically this has been a really good ridge system. as of last year, there were a couple shooters in this area. So I haven't been here. I got one camera running, but I haven't checked it since February. But I'm just gonna scout my way in. I probably won't get too deep because I don't want to booger anything up tonight. And there's just not enough daylight to cover everything I want to cover. It's already after 3 o'clock, so I'm gonna scout my way in and probably just hunt the upper 1/3, maybe an edge or something, but not push too deep. So that's the plan for this evening. Hopefully Dan has a pretty good spot. Hopefully he can scout his way in a little deeper and get set up on something pretty good. So the weather is decent. It's about 60 degrees here, but a big rain front moved through this morning and stopped raining about, I don't know, 3 hours ago, about lunchtime. So hunting one of these scrapes might be a good play. It's a little bit after 4 o'clock and I'm all set up. I'm set up on that primary scrape, exactly where I was hunting last year. I checked this camera real quick and there's a bunch of deer in here in the daylight. Again, I didn't get a real good look at anything to see if Benchmade was there, or S-Bin, or that G2 flower buck, but there's a handful of bucks there. A couple of them look pretty decent. So, I'm just gonna, I don't want to push it any further than this. I'm not here tonight, pull that card on the way out, and analyze the photos, but there were daytime pictures. And there was actually a buck that worked that scrape last night, October 24th at night. So, not a terrible spot. But, it feels like it's gonna rain. I didn't bring any rain clothes. So, it's raining. It's raining hard. About 5:30. The rain just let up about 10 minutes ago. It's a little breezy. I'm pretty cold. As long as it doesn't, as long as the wind doesn't kick up too bad, I think the deer are gonna move tonight. So we got about an hour. We got about an hour till last light. So we're just gonna tuck in and see what happens. It's pretty damn windy. These gusts are probably 20 mile an hour, I guess. Just enough to start making you think it's time to climb down.
Being from Wisconsin, hunting Michigan, Iowa, places like that, I'm used to most of the places I hunt. You see deer. You can set up bad and something's going to come out. You can set up in a spot like I set up opening day and at least something's going to come out. Whether it's a year and a half or a doe or something. Kind of interesting that the deer here were such less numbers. And the pressure ain't that bad. So I don't understand why their numbers are so low, but they have pretty low deer density numbers in comparison to, say, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa. So a guy from up here that's traveling to Ohio has to be prepared to not see as many deer, but maybe see a higher quality animal when they do see one. One interesting thing about these pockets of deer, you had to go find a sign to know that they're there, but it had to be fresh sign. A lot of times you'd go into these spots that we're scouting and you'd find all this sign. But when you'd look, the tracks in the scrape are a few days old. The rubs aren't tacky. I mean, you can feel the rubs and feel if they're sticky, if they're dry. If the tracks are old, if there's leaves in the scrapes, those bucks have probably moved on. Might be nearby. You might want to check the next valley over, the next ridge over. But if the sign's dry, they're not there. You got to be able to walk past good sign that's old. You got to find the hot sign. One day, right after closing time, we had a buck walk across the road in front of us. It was a good buck. So that's something you have to take advantage of. You just don't see a buck like that on public land in low density and go, wow, I saw a buck, and drive home. You stop, you mark the spot, you come back the next day, and you hunt that buck if it was a good buck.
So last night on our way out, we actually caught a buck crossing the road, probably, what was it, Dan, an hour, half hour after dark?
Yeah, I doubt it was an hour, but it was close to it.
So we just marked that on a map and looked at some potential ridge systems, bedding opportunities, whatever you want to call it, to maybe where he was coming from. And we're only, I don't know, 80 yards from the truck, and just got a pretty nice rub. It's not super fresh, but it's not super old either. So we're just gonna keep walking this ridge system to see if we find anything. There's some old signs, some old rubs in here. It wasn't a giant deer, but pretty decent one. After scouting that ridge across the road where we saw that, where we thought that buck was coming from, Dan, Dan was looking at the sign and the terrain and stuff and said there was a possibility that deer actually coming from the other side of the road. So we checked the map out, and there's a really nice ridge system that runs through here. So we hopped across, drove down the road a little ways, hopped across, and now we're gonna scout the top of this, see if we can find anything that ties that movement together. It's the evening of October 26th. Dan and I have been poking around all morning. Scouted 3 or 4 different spots. Dan found some good sign in a spot that he's hunting tonight and just dropped him off. And in between one of the spots that we had scouted and where we seen that buck cross the road, there's a small point or finger that drops down. It's not very long, it's not very big. It looks bigger in person than it is on the map. But, there's an old saying, don't leave a deer to go find a different deer. So, I know there's a buck in this area. And even if I don't find him tonight, or find a place to hunt tonight, there's one here, and I just need to figure out a little more about what he's doing. So, I may end up just scouting tonight, I don't know, but it stands on my back. And I'm just gonna poke around in some of these spots, and if I find something to set up on, I set up on. If I find something to set up on, I set up, and if not, I just keep scouting, and then I know. So that's the plan for this evening. The roach is right behind me. So I'm just down in here scouting this bottom, trying to cut sign where I think that deer crossed last night. Up top there were a couple rubs that were older, but I just got down into this bottom where it starts to open up a little bit. And you can see a faint trail that goes up that point to the road. saw that deer cross last night. Right here's the scrape. It doesn't look like it was work last night, but it's kind of old. But I'm just going to ease my way up down through this bottom. See if the sign gets any better. We saw that deer cross about an hour after dark last night, so I don't think he'd even be at this point in the daylight or shooting light. Plus I need to get out of this bottom, so I'm gonna work my way up here and just go real slow. See if I get anything better. Here's another scrape on this beech tree. Decent tracks right there. That's fresher. There's another one over here. This is fresher sign. The dirt's still granular. It hasn't been dried out yet, so it's a little bit better. I'm really liking some of the stuff that I'm seeing. Here's another scrape. Right up over the side of this guy. There's a couple good tracks in this. Some doe tracks. I'm gonna go up just a little bit further, see what it's like. Well, I've walked a little ways in this bottom, and I've gone about 100 yards with no sign. I was getting nervous that I had walked past what I thought was the best sign, and boogered this spot up, but walked through basically some pretty thick stuff and coming out in this opening. And there's another fresh scrape right here in this beech tree. So I'm almost to the end of this point, the ridge to my west, which is this ridge right here. We scouted the top of that. There was some sign up top, but it's just a thick, nasty clear cut, and I don't think deer can. I think it's too thick for a buck to use it. So I think he's just using these edges on the top and the bottom. And on the top, from where we saw him last night, I don't think he would have got there in time. So I think that he's using this bottom. I want to get out to the edge of this point and see if it's like a thermal hub. There's several points that come down right there. I want to see if there's sign. If there's sign there, that's probably where I'll set up, as long as the wind's okay. Right now, the wind is basically at the southwest down here, but I bet you if you get up on top, it's more of a west wind, but it's coming up this valley and taking me back up. Basically, I'm walking with the wind in my face or close to it. But you gotta be careful, because as I get out into this open stuff, where the sun's hitting that, I might be shooting up that ridge. The thermals might take me up that way, so gotta be careful when I get up here. The thing that makes me a little nervous is I'm not seeing any rubs. There's old rubs in here, but I haven't seen any rubs down here in the bottom, just scrapes. So I got in here on this thermal hub down this bottom, and I'm just looking at the map, trying to see what point would make the most sense for a deer to bed on with a west wind or northwest wind. And I'm just going to poke around this bottom a little bit to see if I find any sign. Nothing right now is real obvious, but that doesn't mean they're not in here. When I got to Thermal Hub, I looked at the map and tried to pick out a point, but there was no sign coming down from any of those points. All the signs still on the bottom, so I kept going. And now the sign's dried up, so I'm gonna turn around.
You guys have heard of the Kenny Rogers tactic, right? Right? You gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
I made it back to the truck. Just didn't have enough conviction in hunting that bottom, knowing that you know, there was more sign up here on the top, and I just didn't see how that deer could get down into that bottom, or that buck, within shooting time. And I don't know where he's coming from, so I just didn't want to set up just to set up because it was getting late. I kept telling myself, just keep scouting, look at a new spot.
Me and Chad had a discussion about cornfields. I felt that deer were eaten in cornfields, and he said, yeah, I think so too. But all these people coming here to hunt are attracted to cornfields, and that's going to put pressure on those areas. I just don't think a mature buck is going to be around those cornfields. I told Chad, yeah, to a point, but hunters are going to miss some stuff. I mean, are there any overlooked cornfields? Are there anything way back? People can't see it from the road. Most of the hunters in the area seem to be non-residents. Where's some corn that people aren't seeing? So we sought off after cornfields that were isolated. One we found that was way off to the side. There's no roads around it, but you could walk way around on the ridges and come in from a different way and get in to where this cornfield was. So we walked down these ridges and got to a point where I thought maybe those bucks would be bedding right off the points of this ridge, and there was a big scrape line, fresh scrapes, fresh pea in the scrapes, rubs that were tacky, sticky, tracks that were within a day old, still had their good definition in them. And I thought, you know what, this looks good. I decided to set up there. We looked at a cornfield that most people wouldn't see. It was really hidden from the road on some private land, and thought, let's look at the ridges above it. But there's 2 points that come down here, and the sign comes together at these 2 points with a lot of scrapes. There's some scrapes behind us here that one after another that got a big track in it that look real aggressive. I mean, some of them don't even have licking branches. It looks like the deer was really worked up. And we got a bedding point over here and a bedding point over here, and they meet right here. And from my experience, you get these bucks that are competing and bedding, they'll race to these scrapes here to be the first one to leave their scent. There's a good rub coming off of that point right there. You can see it from here. You can see the trail that's got the scrapes on it coming from here. So there's 2 different bucks coming in here, I think. And there's a nice tree hanging over the edge right here. And I think that's the spot. A guy can get in there and shoot all this and have his thermal drop down that ridge when it gets calm, if it gets calm. If it doesn't, the wind is okay. So I don't think we go any further. I think we just turn around and go find some more spots. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see what it was true.
This is my setup. My sticks only up 3 sticks. The stand's only up 12 feet. The main trail seems to come right in through there and down here, and right starting there. There's one scrape after another. Probably about 10 or 15 scrapes down there. Maybe more than that. Probably 10 or 15 that are fresh. There's a decent rub over here, and 2 ridges meet right here. And scraping at 2 ridges tells me there's more than one buck using this and they're competing against each other. I just hope we're reading it right and that the bucks are coming from that way, because there is crops at the bottom of the hill. But I came in from quite a ways back that way, and it didn't seem like the deer are coming from that way. It seems like they're going that way, coming back that way in the morning. But I could be wrong. We put up a cell cam right there, aiming at the junction of the 2 trails, And if I don't get something tonight, maybe we'll know, based on the Exodus cell cam, whether or not they're traveling this way or that way tomorrow morning, if we didn't spook them out of here. Now, about 50 yards back coming in here, I kicked a doe already coming out. I know it was a doe, I saw it. So, I'm not very high up, but that's kind of the tree I need to be in. Hopefully I don't get spotted, but I don't think I will. It's a totally complete ambush. I mean, they would have no idea if they're coming from the way I believe they're coming from, that I'm here, so they're not going to be looking up in the tree for me. So I'll just climb up there and see what happens.
Well, going in, I jumped a deer. As I was going in to hunt, that wasn't there when I went in and scouted it. So obviously it had come walking in from someplace. So that evening when I got down, I had not seen a deer. Going out, I had a deer coming up the scrape line towards me. So in my opinion, I read that ridge wrong, and we walked through the deer because we walked such a far distance to get to the point of that ridge when really they were bedding behind me. So deer probably came down that ridge, down that scrape line, towards me, and smelled my tracks and never made it to me. But with nothing to lose, I did give that spot a shot in the morning. And I felt pretty confident that there could be deer in there that had not gotten my scent or had gotten bumped out of there and might come back.
I came back up on this ridge in the morning, hoping to catch the deer coming back from the crops up here. I got a pack of coyotes down there, just yipping and yapping. Sounds like they're down about where I expect the deer to come from, so probably won't see much. Now they sound like they're getting further away. They were getting pretty close.
Sitting there in the morning, the first thing I heard at dawn was hounds. And the whole morning, a pack of beagles kept running around in circles around me. And I'm sure that put a damper on my plans to kill a big buck there. Welcome to public land.
It's the morning of October 27th. Dan and I both hunted this morning. It's about 30. The low this morning was 33 degrees, so we had a double-digit temp drop. And being October 27th, it feels like bucks should start to, on a morning like this morning, bucks should range out a little bit and start to check on some of these does, maybe work some scrapes. Right now I'm set up on a bench between two bedding areas. There's a scrape out in front of me. I've ran cameras here in the past and always saw decent either morning or midday activity. But most of the time it was in November. But this is the first cold morning of October, at least for down here. So I thought that it might be worth a shot. But I'm not sure what time it is. The sun is up, so I would say it's probably closing in on 8 o'clock. And haven't had any action yet. There's a couple oaks dropping acorns here. So I think this is a pretty good spot. scrape. I can't see I mean, I could shoot the scrape from here, but I can't really see it real close. It looks like there's some leaves in it, so it doesn't look like it's been worked recently. Anyways, I think we were going to sit till about 9:30 and then start walking out, so nothing happens by then. I think the plan the rest of the day is just scout and find some more spots. Well, it's 9:24, 9:25. So I'm gonna tear down. Pretty uneventful morning. It sounded like there was something moving up this point to my right, but I could never hear it, or I could never see it. So I have no idea what it was, but it sounded like a deer working its way up towards the top maybe about an hour ago. But I'm gonna tear down and then go past that big primary scrape, that big community scrape, and just scout that bench on my way out, just to see if I'm missing something here in this spot before I give up. I mean, it's traditionally or historically this area has been good, but when I checked that camera on Monday, there hadn't been any big bucks on camera, but that's only one camera in a pretty big area, so I know the camera's not telling the whole story. But yeah, that's it for this morning. I'm gonna go tear down, scout this bench, and then get back, go pick Dan up and get a plan together for where we want to go scout this afternoon.
So 2 days in, we burned half our trip, and we're sitting there with a couple days left, and I still haven't gotten on to my mature buck. My goal was to find and hunt a mature buck. It really didn't matter if I killed it or not. I just wanted to be in the game. I wanted to experience the finding and hunting for a mature buck and being in the game in Ohio. And I hadn't done it yet. So, we kind of burned that first cornfield thing, going in wrong and hunting an afternoon and a morning. I was done there. Back on the feet, back on the boot leather. Let's hit it. We located another isolated cornfield with a back way in that was not very obvious and really didn't look like public land, but it was, where we could get way back in, circle around to this cornfield. We get back there and we start finding big sign. Big, fresh sign.
Well, I'm all set up. Dan and I came in here this afternoon and scouted this bottom. To my back is a cornfield. I'm sitting on a point right now. Bunch of rub lines coming down this point. Scrapes down here behind me. Just all tore up. A lot of sign, big sign, little sign. Scat, a lot of tracks. And Dan is set up probably 80 yards, just on the other side of this point. He's set up over there. So we're basically tag teaming this area to see what we think, see what we see tonight, and then if we need to go in deeper, we can go in deeper. I'm only probably 85, 100 yards from private. We're pretty close to the private, but I have a nice bottom, big draw with another point coming down in here. This is all tore up down in here beside me. I have these deadfalls right here. Deadfalls between me and Dan, and basically there's a chute. There's an open area right here, and that's where all those rubs are, down through there. the other side and going down past Dan. So it's about 3:45. And just getting settled in. So we'll see what this evening brings. It's about 50 degrees, maybe not even that. It's cool, and next to no wind, next to zero wind. So the thermals are really gonna suck and pull down tonight. It's really, really calm. So I'm not very high off the ground. I'm 2 sticks high, and it's set. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 feet, maybe 14 feet, maybe 10 feet. But I got this beech tree all around me, so I got a lot of good front cover. Just a couple little spots to shoot from. So we'll get settled in here and see what happens.
Well, we found this cornfield back here that's hidden from the road. Not a lot of people know about. It's got a really long axis to get back here, but we got back here and we followed the cornfield around. And there's a lot of sign on this end, a lot of scrapes and rubs, and some really big tracks. There's 2 ways the deer seem to be coming in here. We came in along this bottom here, and it looks like the deer are coming from up on that hilltop. And with the wind the way it is, I would think they're bedding over here, right over the top over there. There's really heavy trails and rubs and scrapes going right down through there on the other side of that big tree. And Chad set up on that. That actually probably looks a little better than this spot. But there's some really big tracks over here that seem to be coming from up the hill. So I'm going to give this a shot. There's a trail coming down like this over here. And there's another trail coming down over here. And this one has some really big rubs on it periodically through the trees. And then from then on, the scrapes over here got really big tracks in them. So obviously these bucks are cruising for does feeding on the corn. It's just a matter of when they do it. Are they doing it in the evening, they doing it in the morning, or are they doing it in the middle of the night? We're remote enough that I would think that if they're bedding on the top there, that the does are dropping in here, in the last half hour of daylight, the bucks are coming in right behind them. So we'll see. This looks like a pretty good setup. I'd be surprised if one of us didn't at least see something. I got a good shooting lane right through here. And right through there, right up there. I think it's perfect. Just hopefully the thermals start dropping in the evening. I always set up for the thermals. I set up thinking, what are the thermals going to do? The wind's a little iffy. It's actually blowing this way, which could screw that trail up, could screw Chad up. But there's very, very little wind. And even now, as it calms, the thermals are pulling towards the field. And every now and then I get a little bit of a breeze that pulls up the hill. Not worried about that. That's going to go away by the time the deer start moving. At least I hope so. So, ain't got much more time. One more day in this state before I hit Indiana, so nice to get something done here. Well, I jumped down and moved. I lost my confidence in that spot back there.
So it was my turn to pull the old Kenny Rogers tactic. And there was a spot when we first came in there where there was a scrape by the river. And it just bothered me that maybe the deer were coming from that way, coming up the draw, coming from that side hills, somewhere over there. And at least that way we would cover both ends. If the deer came from one way, Chad would see them. If they came from the other way, I'd see them. Maybe they're coming from both. my wind kept drifting up the hill and then drifting over by Chad. And best case scenario was drifting to Chad and ruining his hunt. So I just felt like I was screwing everything up over there. So I sent him a text, said I was moving, got down, I came back to where we turned the corner and went up the corn edge. And I came over here with the intention of going up this draw and following the signs. And I'd seen some stuff on a map up ahead. But when I got in here, what I found was, when I got to that last scrape there, I looked up the hill, and there's a big rub line with big rubs going up the hill into that dark pine forest. And the way the wind's going, it's perfect for bedding up in there. Whether or not they get here in daylight, I have no idea. But they've got a rub line there, and a scrape there, and a scrape there that were freshened this morning. So, we'll give her a shot. It's better than sitting over there having the wind blow at the deer. I was scanning around, trying to figure out where does the sign go from this scrape. That last scrape, I can't see where it goes. I'm scanning. Is there a rub? Is there a scrape? Is there anything? And then on the side hill, I saw a little faint trail. Looking up that trail, up on the hill, I saw a big rub, big high rub. I said, aha. The landowner on the property next to us, I'm sure he saw our truck parked and where we came in from the access, knew we were back there, and he was going to make sure and ruin our hunt. So he drove his ATV all the way around the cornfield, under me, under Chad, and did his little part of hunter harassment. You know, I help hunters. Some hunters hate other hunters and want hunting all to themselves. Just the way it is. I filmed him in case he got confrontational, because I'd turn him into the DNR. But fortunately, he just kind of went away and I left it at that.
Well, I'm not sure if you guys can hear that or not, but right over my shoulder, a guy on a four-wheeler. I'm sure it's probably the landowner down there, but right there. About an hour ago, some hikers came through. Now this freaking guy. Unbelievable.
The deer probably came out a little later because of the ATV, but right before dark, deer started coming off of the hillside that we thought the bedding was on and coming down by Chad. And there's one that came out later that may have been a buck, but Chad wasn't sure, and eventually lost light. So the next day, we started off there scouting, and my goal was to now scout that sign back to that buck, set up close and kill him. That's my game. That's what I love to do. I got on that trail, I was like a bloodhound on that trail, and Chad even commented, "You're starting to get that glow, Dan. I can see it in your eyes." And I'm like, yeah, I think we got a crack at this thing. We're at least going to get a hunting. And I followed that sign back, and it just kept getting better and better and better, and went right into a classic bedding area.
It is Thursday morning, and Dan and I are headed into the area that we had scouted and hunted yesterday. We scouted the back edge of this cornfield where all that sign was, and set up not too far, kind of on opposite sides of a point where we were both basically monitoring two different bottoms. And the area that I was in, we had some does come down through about 6:30, and then there were a bunch of more deer that came down at closing time when it was dark, and I couldn't see or tell what they were, but they were moving. They were coming from a little ways off. So my plan tonight is just basically go up and get a little bit deeper, but because I was covered up in deer, I had to wait to tear down. So as I was tearing down, I met Dan back on the other side of this bottom, and he had cut a pretty big track over here. He didn't see any deer, but he cut that big track, and as I came over to meet him, there was a deer blew at us further up this bottom. So that's what we're going into, kind of scour right now, is kind of work up this draw where Dan cut that big track, and see if there's any sign from where we heard that deer last night. There's like a thermal hub that Dan found up there that has some bedding opportunities, so we're gonna sneak up this bottom and see if we can't find any more sign.
Yeah, looking at the way that the property lays out up there, they just about got to be bedding there. There's hiking trails all the way around that thermal hub will kind of force them into there. So I'd have to think they're coming from there, don't you think?
Yeah, I think looking at the map, I think that you're right. I mean, you're right about the deer that I saw last night being closer. I would have thought that they were further away, and you were right on that. So it was 7:30 when we were, or 7:20, I guess, when we were right here talking last night, and that deer was still a ways away. So
yeah,
the proximity of that would make sense.
Yep. This is a pretty good sign. This is where that big track comes down there. It's just a matter of following this thing back to where it's coming from. I'm sure it's coming from that thermal hub. But the track back there was, we should have got some film of it yesterday when we found it, but we were in a hurry to get set up. There's a pretty good rub line going through here. Coming right down to those scrapes.
What's up there?
Another rub.
Yep.
This is a pretty good one. Perennial. It's been hit this year and past years. This year's has just been touched. It's the old trail.
Yeah.
Man, there's some big shit here. This is looking pretty good. There's a giant one over here. Let's take a look at that one.
Okay. That's just something to treat.
This one's been rubbed for years and years and years. Looks like the backside of that giant bent willow is rubbed too.
Okay.
Let's see what's on the back of this willow. That's a hit willow too. Here's a bed. Just used one. Yeah, look at this, man. Holy crap, come over here. Look at this. What's interesting is there's something really aggressively hitting here. If it's the front of his rack going down or a drop or something, I don't know. But look at this, these claw marks in here. Do you see that?
Yeah, well this is like, this tells me that deer's pretty wide because it almost looks like brow tine.
Yeah, so if he's got his head tilted down, it might be the tips.
Yep.
But you'd think his rack would be around like this. And it'd be something dropping down doing that. Is it on both sides? It does not seem to be.
Not a bunch on this
So it
side.
seems like something on his left side is doing that. Like maybe he's got a drop or something.
Inside point or something.
Yeah. This is looking pretty cool, ain't it?
Yeah, let's get up there. Starting to get a little thicker on this
Take a
higher
look at the
elevation.
map where we're at. See if it's leading towards that, where we think it's coming from, or if it's going up higher. I bet you it's coming from where we think. We still got a long ways to go, but there's another draw here. I'd like to see what's going on there. And maybe if it's going up into that draw, we stop at that point. And what we could do is drop down here and scout this and see if there's something better for you.
Yeah.
You know, and then we'd have both points covered.
I like that idea.
Because this buck is much bigger than what you got for sign over there.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So let's do that. Let's check this up to that draw. Big bed right here with it low. Big fresh bed. That's a big body size too.
Yeah.
You see that? That was a huge animal that laid there. See the body size?
Yeah. You don't think we booted him out there, did
We
we?
may have, because if you look, that
That
branch is freshly broken.
Green,
there,
yeah.
And it's crushed down from him laying on it.
Yeah.
Interesting. If it wasn't last night, it was, I mean, it wasn't this morning, it was last night, because last night we had that deer blowing up here.
Yep.
This might have been him.
I mean, there's older up right next to it, too.
Right, right. Those leaves are crushing up. It looks like he laid there a couple days in a row.
More little tiny rubs there. Nice rub there.
Can't make out a track. Yeah, this deer wasn't here long ago. It was either today or it was yesterday. I think we still should go a little further.
See, this is, if you look at the topo map on this, this would still be the lower portion of this ridge.
Yeah.
I don't think this is below halfway.
Yeah, but it's the first bench.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's critical. This bench is what's causing all this action right here. Because if you look, we've been on the bench, and otherwise they're walking through this rocky crap or they're walking down a straight ledge.
Yeah.
So this is pulling them. I think we need to get to the mouth of that draw and set up there, and then back out and make a setup up the draw someplace in that thermal hub we're looking at.
Yeah.
But I think that this bench probably needs to be hunted right where it goes up that draw.
Right. Yeah. It probably goes right straight around the top of the mouth.
So this draw turns here, goes up, And there's a bench here that comes in, a bench here, and a trail, and then a lower bench. And we had picked up a lot of sign down lower. And now when you get to this point, everything kind of comes together, and you see rubs going down to where we had the rubs lower. And everything meets at this point. And what we believe is a mature buck would bed in this draw up here. So I think if we push any further, we'd be kicking them out. This is like that threshold where you don't want to go further. There ain't much sign right here. The sign's back further, but we're on the same trails coming from in there. I think this is the setup. And looking at this with a nice wind dropping down, a thermal drop, you can cover this little opening from that tree right there. And you don't have to trim anything out of here. And you can cover every trail, the one that splits down there and the ones that split from right here. And hopefully that buck comes in here. I think you'd feel plenty safe moving in here in daylight. There's no human sign in here at all.
Drainage. This bench. This bench. This bench.
We're just using a GoPro, so you probably can't see it very well. But we're trying to figure out exactly how he was coming through here, because Chad thought maybe that tree here, they could get around us a little bit. And I kind of agree, I just didn't want to go too much further. But we saw this deadfall here, and we're like, well, he ain't getting through there. And there's a bunch of deadfalls up there he ain't getting through, so we figured he's coming through this gap. And looking up there, I spotted a rub that is just gigantic. The middle of the rub is this high off the ground. But we're not going to go over there and film it because we're going to hunt here. Probably out of that tree now. We kind of changed our mind. It could be that we got too aggressive because we've already hit one big bed. But I think this is where we need to be. And hopefully that deer's around the corner enough that he doesn't know we've been here. But this aggressive moves, either you see nothing or you see it all. And I think this site killed really big stuff. And there's obviously something really big living here, so all or nothing my last night, right there. Now let's go check and see if that thermal hub has activity like this, and maybe we can cover everywhere this deer could be. And even if we bumped him here, he might have went to the thermal hub, and then that might be the spot. So let's go take a look at that.
Once we found that spot, I was set. That's where I was hunting. But we still wanted to look around and see if there's a better setup for Chad. So we searched and circled that whole property without going anywhere near that bedding area, and attempted to find another setup.
It's always a good thing to be the first one in line, because if you're the guy in front, you stumble on the sheds. See what I see? You see it? It's old enough, this might even be our boy. It's a nice shed.
That's a decent one.
Yeah.
It's been sitting there for, that's not last year's.
Yeah, it's a couple years old.
Yeah.
There ain't a shoe mark on this thing,
Yep.
anywhere. Oh, that's cool. Let's fish.
We're down in here in this bottom of where Dan was talking about that thermal hub, and the draw that where we think that deer's bedded, where Dan's gonna hunt tonight, is over here, kind of to our southeast. But we just wanted to come down in this bottom and see if he's using any of these points down coming into this thermal hub, and then there might be a possibility for another set off of one of these points. And what we're finding is just a bunch of scrapes underneath these beech trees and just some smaller rubs.
One thing that's key though is that the one scraper we can make out a fresh track, it was probably his track. It was a big track. I could fit my whole hand in it. Where the other scrapes over by the cornfield, a lot of them were small except for the one that had his track in it. So it might be limited sign, but it's his sign.
So I think we're just gonna poke around in here just a little bit further. It's getting kind of late in the afternoon, and we still got to go back to camp. So we're just go up here a little, I don't know, 100 yards maybe. Check the map and make sure we're in that thermal hub where those points drop down and see what we find. Oh, so we just literally at that spot we just turned the camera off where we found those scrapes, and some of that small sign. Dan spotted this bigger rub, and it's probably just above knee high, so it's not real high. But the cool thing about this is probably a 5-inch diameter tree, and there's only 2 tine marks here. Like, so it looks like it's brow tines just grooved into this tree, and it looks, I mean, deep gouges, and there's nothing around the tree, so it tells you that that deer is you know, relatively wide with only just these 2 gouges being rubbed like that. It doesn't you know, there's no shavings on top of the leaves, so it's not super fresh, but it's from this year. It's from probably the last couple weeks, but he's been down in here at some point. And that big rub that you found had those tine marks,
Yep.
like that on the front. So I think you're right with that big track, and these rubs, it's the same deer.
Yeah, so we're probably onto his bedding areas.
Yeah, it's cool. So we just got up to the top of this point, and there wasn't a whole lot of sign coming up the point. There's pretty faint trail, some small rubs, nothing really big. And on the way up, Dan and I were just talking about being surprised that there wasn't more sign coming up, but it was kind of open. And we got to the top, about 100, well, maybe 50 or 60 feet down from the top. There was a scrape there, perennial scrape, but it wasn't opened up in the last couple weeks. And then we saw one small little rub, and then we went up another 40 feet, and it's just loaded up with rubs. This one's about thigh high, pretty big, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's about 10 rubs right here in a 10-yard circle. So what Dan and I were just talking about is this deer very well could be, this could be his other exit. He mean, it doesn't look like he's using it as much, but coming in from one way, Dan coming home on one side, and there's a possibility he's using this too, it's just not as often. So this is what we were looking for right here.
And there's a good possibility that I did damage, or he catches my wind and comes out this way.
Yep.
So we should probably follow this in and see if we can find that exit.
And right now we have what, 1 point between, this point right here would be between where we are now and where that bed was, or where we were going to set up. There's 1 point between us.
It's obviously the same deer.
Oh, 100, yeah, 100%. And this is, I mean, there's a lot of rubs right here.
Yep, and this heads right towards that direction.
Yeah. It's pretty cool once you start figuring this out, how it ties together. It's pretty neat.
To me, this is a lot better than just hunting the typical ridge sides and hunting the 2- and 3-year-olds running, cruising.
Right.
You're actually hunting a deer.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a little bit of thinking power to figure this stuff out.
Hard to do in a week, though.
Yeah.
That back exit from the same bedding area that I was going to hunt looked pretty good. It looked like there was a good chance that buck could exit that way. The sign wasn't as fresh as it was going in the direction where I was sitting. However, it was our last day, and the wind was absolutely horrible for the back exit. The closest he could get was way too far for daylight movement. We didn't find anything that was better than where Chad was the evening before, and he had seen deer and he had seen some chasing going on, so he was going to move up to where he's seen the deer and where he's seen the chasing and try up there. And I was going to go in after that big buck.
It's about 4 o'clock and I'm just walking up this point. I was just set up over here, but you probably can't see it with the GoPro, but there's a guy standing right there, just walked in on me. So I'm kind of, right now he hasn't totally screwed me up, but I'm kind of watching to see where he's going because he has a climber on his back. Just kind of monitor the situation and see what he does. I'm surprised he's out in this rain. I didn't think there would be very many people out here, but he's out walking around. I'm gonna make this pretty short because it's raining pretty hard and I'm getting low on GoPro battery. But I come in here and I'm basically about 100 yards from where. It's not right. Okay, I'm gonna make this pretty short because it's raining pretty hard and I'm getting low on GoPro battery. But I jumped over to that next point where I seen those does come down last night and where I heard those other deer coming down, and just worked up about, I don't know, about 100 feet in elevation off the bottom. There's a trail that wraps around this point, and then a trail that comes down, comes actually down the point, right where those intersectors are scraped. To my left, I have a bunch of blowdowns, and kind of right out in front of me, I have a bunch of blowdowns at like between, I don't know, say like 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. There's no deer coming straight at me, so everything is forced and funneled either down to my right or down to my left, and all within 25 yards. So if there's deer that come down, it's going to be close. It's going to be close quarters, which might not be a good thing tonight because I cannot hear anything. The rain's loud, the ground's wet, I'm not going to be able to hear anything moving. So I'm really going to have to just pay attention and watch with my eyes and try to pick up movement before they get to me, because if they get on top of me, there's no way I'm getting my bow and getting drawn. So I'll just settle in for a wet one and see how it goes.
Camera's getting fogged up. It's pouring out. The buck bedding area is right up there. There's a big rub up there. This tree and that tree funnel that deer right through here. You can see the trails. All the sign is behind me. If we didn't spook him, hopefully he comes out here. Hopefully I don't wreck any cameras again. So hopefully we can get it on film with this rain. We'll see. Be nice if it stopped. The rain's subsiding a little bit. The camera lens isn't as fogged, so hopefully clears up. I'm going to try putting the camera back out for a little while, but it's going back in my pocket if it rains again. It's really looking nice today. Look at how dark and foggy it is. If he's bedding right up there, I have to think he comes out early today.
Well, the giant never showed, and I had to think that maybe I once again pushed that envelope a little too close. I probably kicked him out of that bed we found. That bed was awfully fresh, and if I would have probably set up 100 yards further back, maybe I'd have killed him. I don't know. But that's what it is. It's a game of inches. And if you fear bumping that buck out of the bedding, you'll never kill big bucks on a regular basis. You have to occasionally jump a giant buck while you're creeping in, see his tail go up, see his rack go over the hill, and curse yourself and say you'll never do it again. But you have to. You have to keep going in and doing that, because that's how you get close enough to kill him. You can't learn how close is too close and how far is too far without occasionally jumping that buck, without occasionally pushing that envelope. This was a good hunt. I don't always have to kill a deer. I got my in-the-game hunt last evening. And now it's off to Indiana. Hunt out of a beast stand. Don't wee-wee on your boots.